Hey guys, what is up? So the other day, we had a publishing house, not a very small indie one, but say they are sick of, literally used hashtag Sickofthesmut. Now I want to make it clear that, you know, you are an indie publisher, indie publishing house. You can choose what genres you publish, okay? There are things that are, considered closed door, right? So, or fade to black romance, where you don't explicitly have sex scenes. There's nothing wrong with that. Or they call it clean romance as well. Cool. That is a subgenre of romance. Some people like it. That is not an issue. There is also this, I also want to make it clear that this publishing house is Christian based. So usually, I'm not saying always, but a lot of Christian authors, Christian romance authors, don't put, the smut in. Everyone has their different thing. Cool. There's not an issue with that. This is exactly why when I made my, Call Me Chris versus Booktok video, this is part of the problem. This is an ongoing thing. This is not new. That romance genre is always getting attacked. We're always the first ones to be on the ban list. Okay? They'll find any excuse, even if it's closed door. If it's queer, if it's black, if it's Latinx, if it's indigenous. They don't care. The bans are coming for you. So you as an indie publishing company should be standing against this. Look, if you are a particular, like I said, if you are an author or a publishing house, you don't have to publish books with smut, right? You can have, when you're, how do I explain this? Not every publishing house goes for every genre or subgenre, and that's perfectly okay. You can have your, criteria for those that want to be published through your house. That's not an issue. The issue here is you say you say hashtag Sickofthesmut, and then you're shitting on other authors. You're shitting on readers. That is the issue, right? Now, I do want to commend Bookthreads. So Bookthreads has decided to take this hashtag Sickofthesmut and use it to deliver the spiciest of books to combat it. And I love you guys for it. I think it is a phenomenal idea. I will be posting some of my, the spiciest of stuff, because I just read some really spicy stuff recently. I love that. I absolutely love that. Right? And I also want to make it clear that as a reader, right, I read all genres. I do not care if you personally don't like romance or you don't like the spice scenes, right? Like I said with Call Me Chris, if she's not into that, she's not into that. I don't care. Then don't pick up those books, right? That's cool. Not every book is going to be geared towards us. I read everything from nonfiction to horror to literary fiction to children's books to YA to NA to you name it, I read it. I'm all over the place, okay? I like smut, and I also really like banter. Okay, a recent book that I just read, well, it did have a lot of smut in it, and that was really good. I felt like the best parts were banter. Banter works very well for romance without having explicit sex scenes. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a romance book to have banter, right? Another book that I read that had, she was kind of falling in love with him, but it wasn't like, the whole book plot is not romance, okay? It's historical fiction. Was What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. The banter between our female main character and our male main character, who's like babysitting her, phenomenal. I live for that, right? So, you know, there's not an issue if you want to choose to read in a genre that's not romance, right? It's like, this is what annoys me. Then I also want to mention that there have been people saying that, oh, there's, you know, spice in some of these YA, or they're saying there's romances targeted to YA, and like there's sex scenes in it. I want to make this very clear. Those that are doing that are not usually the author and don't understand how things are categorized, okay? First of all, let's start off with YA is young adult, and that is from ages 12 to 18. Now, unfortunately, I've heard about 12-year-olds having sex. That should not be happening. I want to make that clear. You know, but are they explicitly marketed towards 12-year-olds? No. No. Now, if you look at the categories when you're looking up books, there's YA, right? YA is the age category. And then there's the subcategories with the actual genres. And there is a romance genre. Okay, but usually, and I say usually like 99.9% of the time, the romance doesn't have sex scenes. Right? If it does, it's closed door. They're just exploring, and they're usually, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Majority of those are coming of age. Hand-holding, kissing. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. The kissing and the hand-holding and the coming of age. Should we be marketing, sex scenes to 12-year-olds? Absolutely not. And it's not the authors, and it's not the, the publishing houses and the literary agents that are doing that, right? It's the readers that don't necessarily understand. Now, that being said, I was having a conversation on Threads with someone, and, I will take it that I said that YA was technically a genre, but it's not. Okay, I take the blame for that one. It is an age category. And I said, they're the where you actually find the actual genres. Not everything that is categorized as YA, right? So like nonfiction books, like I just read I read a book by Jimmy Carter, right? I shouldn't say anyone. I would say a 12-year-old could read it. Would they be able to understand everything that was happening in the book? Probably not. Probably not. A high schooler could read it. Would they be able to understand more? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's not marketed towards either because it's not meant to be, right? Could they read it? Absolutely. Absolutely. Just like adults could read YA, just like adults could read children's books, right? And yes, as a parent, you get to choose what your child reads or not, right? This is why book bans are bad. Now, I've already said this in multiple videos, okay? Just because it's a problematic author does not mean the book should be banned. Okay, I think that's a very, very slippery slope. There are books that I would prefer my child never to read. Okay. Like I said, I prefer. More because of whether it being a problematic author or some other things that are in the book, even if it's marketed towards YA and appropriate for his age range, there are just certain things that I prefer him not to read. And that's a personal choice. Now, if he comes to me and says, hey mom, what do you think about this book? We can have that discussion, right? And I want to make it clear, I'm pretty open to him reading anything within his range, okay? Like, it's cool. He loves audiobooks. He loves manga and anime, comic books, whatever, right? There's a certain series, you guys might hate on me. Okay, I'll talk about the book series I prefer not to read. It's Lemony Snicket. I'm going to say it straight out. I prefer not to read it. I don't want him reading about child abuse and, you know, child marriage and this you know, the way that the uncle treated them. I personally didn't like the books. I felt like it was very problematic, and I just didn't want him reading it. That being said, I got them out of my house. I donated them to our library, so if other people want to access them, that is quite all right. You know, if he wants to go to the library one day and pick them out and decide to read them, then we'll sit down and have that conversation. Right? We'll have that conversation. But that's my personal choice. I'm not saying for everyone to not read Lemony Snicket, right? No, that's my personal thing. You know, when book bans, right, are always going to be targeted first, as well as education, when it comes to fascism and the downfall of democracy. Okay, this has happened for centuries. When there's going to be an overturn, this is what starts. There's a pattern of it. This is not new. Book banning, especially in America, is not new. I've said this before and I'll keep saying it. It started with the Puritans in this country. And for those that are saying that, oh, well, book bans are not actually happening, there's no actual banned book in America, there are over 4,000 books trying to be challenged nationwide. It starts small. It starts in the school libraries, and then it goes to the public libraries, and then it goes to the publishers who may or may not pull their books. And this is why we need to take a stand. This company is not taking a stand at all. However, there are plenty of companies that are taking a stand. And for those that decide to take a stand, as long as you're not problematic in other ways, I will absolutely support you. And as a fellow author, I will always be against book bans. I know that my books are not for everyone. Okay. Not everyone's going to be interested, and that's absolutely okay. We know that in marketing. Not everything is going to be geared towards everyone. That is absolutely okay. But I'm never going to be like, oh, well, this person's a problem, so their book should be banned. No. In fact, if you guys are, a lot of you are not new here, but for those that are new here, you haven't taken a look on my profile, I'm currently doing an annotation of J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. She's very problematic, and I talk about that, and I talk about how you cannot separate the art from the artist, right? And I show exactly that. No, does that mean I think everyone should be reading Harry Potter? Absolutely not. Right? But can we learn from the wrongdoings of others how to be better? Yes. And I think part of that in our craft, as an author, now granted, all of my currently published books are nonfiction, so keep that in mind. But as I'm working on other projects that are both nonfiction and fiction, other subgenres, to be better at your craft is also to read not just in your genre but others, right? So I've talked about banter, talk about descriptions. One thing that I absolutely loved about What the River Knows in by Isabel Ibanez was her description of Egypt, right? Now, I'm usually, depending on the book, right? I'm usually okay with little description of the surrounding area. Okay, it really just depends on the context and why the importance of it. But it was not only so detailed, but it was very important to the other things that were the other themes in the book and the influence that other countries had in Egypt at the time that this book was set. That is something that is important, right? I've read, we talked about, I read from no smut to smut. I've had very spicy dark romance smut books, right? And I said, the banter is the best part. The little things, right? The nicknames that are given, right? Getting under someone's skin. How they're reacting, how they're looking, their body language. Sometimes even what they're wearing. All of that comes into play. The arc of the character, right? There are so many elements to being an author that we have to learn. And yes, learning from what you can do better, right? From problematic books, looking at it, how we can combat that, to doing, like I said, there was little, if you guys watch my annotation of chapter 6 of Harry Potter, I talk about the lack of there's some diversity, but when there is, it's such a terrible description, right? And I'm saying chapter 6 specifically, but there are other characters that come into play throughout her series that it's bad. It's just bad, right? The way you're naming your characters, the way they're described, it's just, and it's not that the character themselves are bad people, right? It's the way that they're described physically that is, racist. That's what I want to make clear. So how we can do better, right? I know as a white author, I would love to put diversity in my book, and part of me is afraid to, because I want to do them justice. I want to do other, marginalized groups justice. And I'm going to continue to work on that and study and have sensitivity readers when I'm ready to make sure that everything is good. Because we can do better. But I also think that as a white author, that it's not necessarily our responsibility, right? Let me clear that up. Should we have diversity in our books? Yes. In general, absolutely, but do them justice. But I also don't blame white authors for not doing that because of that, right? Because they're afraid. And instead, like Rena Kent was asked, well, are you going to write about other marginalized communities? Because she's written romance. And she said, I don't feel comfortable. I don't think I could do it justice. No, I've heard mixed reviews, right? I've heard some say, that's okay, we understand, right? And as a fellow author, I agree. Like, I feel that way. But I've also heard other people say, well, you're not gay, right? You're not a male gay person, and yet you wrote that way. Why can't you put yourself in their shoes? So I also understand that point, right? And I want to add that what Rena Kent could have said was, hey, while I am afraid, here are some other amazing authors you should check out, right? And she could have listed a couple, right? Just a couple. Or like say, hey, look, while I am afraid, there are plenty of, you know, those that have their own voice in the community that you should be uplifting. Something super simple, right? Now, again, I don't blame Rena Kent for what she said, but this is something that she could have just added on. Now, is it PR marketing? Yes, but also I think that's true to the sentiment. Just like we are currently in Black History Month, there are people that, white people specifically, asking for Black book recommendations by Black book authors or book readers, right? Do the work. Google, Pinterest, um, look through TikTok, look through Threads, look through Lemonade, look through Rednote. It is not hard to find book recommendations when you want them. But also, I want to make this clear, 2 points. One, you should be reading diversely all year round. So while I know some people may be like, well, you're not really, all the books you're reading this month aren't by Black authors. No, they're not. I have a very, you know, diverse read, genre, and author that I'm reading this month. Okay. Are many of them Black authors? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I'm also reading Black authors. I read a lot of Black authors back in January, and I will continue to read Black authors March through December. It's as simple as that. My other point is that while I'm loving the book recommendations I'm seeing this month, I also like seeing them the other months. And you know how I did that? Because I trained my algorithms on my social media pages to do just that. I get book recommendations from, Latinx readers and authors, from LGBTQ authors and readers, from, Black authors and readers, and so forth. I get it all year long. I don't have to physically search for any books because I'm constantly getting book recommendations. My TBR is well over 10,000 books at this point. It's beyond ridiculous. And you know what I do? Keep adding to it. I add to it far faster than I read, and I read pretty fast. So that tells you something. Now, are there times where I keep seeing a certain book and I might bump up on the TBR list? Yes. Especially if there's sequels coming or there's, a new book by a favorite author, which mind you, I've had quite a few this week that have announced, and I am super excited. I'm excited for 2025 book releases because it's going to be a good year. But my point still stands. We train our algorithms to get those recommendations all year long. Or if your algorithm is not trained yet, do the search. Use the search bar. It's really not that hard. Reading in own voices is extremely important. And I also want to recommend that while, romance might be your preferred genre, right? Or historical fiction or horror or nonfiction. I know nonfiction doesn't get as much love, but I've been reading YA fantasy a lot lately. I also want to try to challenge you guys to read other genres, because you just never know. You might find another genre that you like. Anyway, I hope you all have a terrific day, and I'll see you guys next time.